Hello and welcome. It's 10 a.m. on Tuesday, the 27th of January. You're tuned in to our mid-morning newscast here on Arirang TV. Thanks for joining us on this crisp winter's day here in Seoul. I'm Mark Broome. Let's take a look at what's making the headlines. Reacting to North Korea's list of preconditions for dialogue, South Korea says it has no intention of cancelling planned military drills with the US or lifting sanctions on the North just for the sake of talks. Going back on his earlier promise to respect the spirit of repentance, Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe says he may leave out key descriptions of Japan's World War II conduct in a statement to be issued in August on the 70th anniversary of its defeat. Plus, the leader of Greece's anti-austerity Syriza party, Alexis Tsipras, is sworn in as Prime Minister amid fears about what his win means for the country's bailout agreements with the European Union. But we begin right here in Korea and the slowing momentum for inter-Korean talks. South Korea's proposal for dialogue with North Korea actually went unanswered for about a month now, but Pyongyang has since laid out preconditions that must be met before starting talks, but Seoul says it's not willing to even consider them. Hwang Sang-hee starts us off.
South Korea says it has no plans to consider North Korea's demands for returning to dialogue. Unification Ministry spokesperson Im Byung-chul said Monday the preconditions laid out by Pyongyang are issues that could be discussed at the negotiating table.
For fundamental improvements in inter-Korean relations, South Korean government believes it's not appropriate to accept North Korea's unjustified preconditions before any talks are held.
One of the key preconditions laid out by the North is canceling the upcoming joint military drills between South Korea and the United States. The state-run Nodongshinmun newspaper on Monday reiterated that inter-Korean relations will meet a dead end if the exercises take place as planned. The paper claimed that the trust between the two Koreas will only be restored after the joint drills are called off. Seoul and Washington say the annual exercises are defensive in nature, but Pyongyang calls it a rehearsal for invasion. Amid the inter-Korean tug-of-war, chief nuclear envoys from South Korea, the US, and Japan will meet in Tokyo on Wednesday to discuss issues related to North Korea. South Korea will hold a separate vice ministers meeting with the US in Seoul on Thursday. Amid fears of a possible loss of momentum between the two Koreas, the Unification Ministry says its month-old offer for dialogue still stands and that it's waiting for North Korea's response. Hwang Sang-hee, Arirang News.
Now, it has emerged that North Korea has introduced a regulation that would allow it to detain South Korean businessmen at the joint Kaesong industrial complex if it found the businessmen were not carrying out their contractual duties. Seoul's Unification Ministry said on Monday that it told North Korea back in November in verbal and written messages that it would not accept these kind of new bylaws. North Korea notified Seoul of these unilateral changes back in September. The South Korean ministry says the North has no legal basis to detain South Korean businessmen in the complex for any reason, adding that the highest level of punishment, in this case especially, would be just having them sent back to South Korea. Pyongyang has yet to respond to Seoul's latest comments on this rather sensitive matter. Now, with this year's policy goals set, President Park Geun-hye is expected to announce a partial reshuffle of her cabinet this week. For more on which key players will likely move and who will stay put, our presidential office correspondent Chae-son reports.
By carrying out a cabinet reshuffle since nominating a new prime minister last Friday, President Park Geun-hye likely hopes to regain public support for economic policies as she enters her third year in office. The president's approval ratings dropped to an all-time low of 30% following allegations of her aides abusing their power and disorder surrounding a document leak from the presidential office. The pending reshuffle, expected to come early this week, will most definitely include a new oceans minister. A ruling party lawmaker close to the president, Yoo Ki-jun, who once practiced maritime law, is widely talked about candidate. The shakeup could also include the unification and transport ministers, both of whom enter the cabinet after President Bak's inauguration. The president has repeatedly spoken about improving inter-Korean ties this year, the 70th anniversary of the division of the two Koreas, and looks set to add momentum to our unification preparation drive. The transport minister could be dismissed after the government was criticized for its investigation into the recent nut rage incident on a Korean Air flight. But the cabinet's economic team, led by Finance Minister Choi Kyung-hwan, will likely stay put to enforce the president's economic revitalization plan and public pension and labor reforms. As for the presidential chief of staff Kim Ki-chun, some speculate he could resign sooner than later, as both the cabinet and presidential office shakeups are expected to be completed by next month. Choi Yu-sun, Arirang News.
President Park Geun-hye is urging Korea's financial sector to think outside the box when it comes to investing in ideas. In a video message for an event hosted by the Korea Financial Investment Association on Monday, the president emphasized the financial sector's role in helping to realize the government's so-called creative economy vision and achieving economic reforms. She said Korea is facing a very important period where it must prepare for another 30-year cycle of prosperity and called on the sector to support new ideas and innovative challenges. She also vowed government support to remove outdated practices and regulations for the financial and IT sectors to hopefully make them more globally competitive. Korea's finance minister has pledged to help the nation's young people find work. Meeting with a group of college students in Seoul on Monday, Choi Kyung-hwan said the government's top economic priority, as it undergoes structural reforms, should be to boost the country's youth employment rate. Now, in Korea, the jobless rate for those aged from 15 to 29 stood at 9% last year, which is the highest it's been for a while and much higher than the overall jobless rate. The minister also vowed to improve government policies aimed at supporting working mothers so they can more easily balance work and family life. The minister, Che, said structural reforms may be a painstaking process, but they are necessary to make Korea a better place to live. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has hinted his statement to mark the 70th anniversary of Japan's defeat in World War II may not include key phrases of remorse over its wartime atrocities. As a victim of Tokyo's past wrongdoings, Korea is watching developments extremely closely. Park Ji-won has more.
Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has suggested he may not include key expressions used by previous administrations to show remorse over Japan's wartime wrongdoings. Abe is set to release a statement in August, marking the 70th anniversary of the end of World War II. In a televised interview, he said, "It's not about whether we use expressions that have been repeated in the past." Although he plans on inheriting the spirit of previously issued statements, he added that he wants to put out a statement that represents his administration's stance on the 70th anniversary. The Korean government expressed concerns on Monday. Seoul's foreign ministry said if Abe is sincere about upholding the spirit of previous apologies, his new statement should include expressions that could heal and improve relations with neighboring countries. Abe's stance has also garnered criticism in Tokyo. The leader of Japan's main opposition Democratic Party, Katsuya Okada, among others, called his remarks intolerable, saying it will deny the peaceful path that Japan has taken over the past 7 decades. In a statement in 1995, then Prime Minister Tomichi Murayama expressed deep apology over his country's colonial aggression, which caused tremendous suffering, to mark the 50th anniversary of Japan's defeat. And in 2005, then Prime Minister Junichiro Koizumi used similar key expressions in his statement on the 60th anniversary of the end of World War II. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
Japan's government has promised to keep using diplomatic channels to secure the release of Japanese hostage Kenji Koto, but has admitted that it's still yet to make direct contact with his Islamic State kidnappers. Tokyo says it's coordinating efforts with other countries, especially Jordan, after the group amended its ransom demand to a prisoner swap. In the latest video posted by IS, a man's voice, purportedly Goto's, reads a statement saying he would be freed in exchange for the release of that woman there, who is facing the death penalty in Jordan for taking part in a series of hotel bombings 10 years ago. Japan's deputy foreign minister, who was sent to Jordan to work on this crisis, has promised to not give up until they save Mr. Goto. Korea's consumer sentiment rebounded from a 3-month fall in January, but the improvement was not strong enough to reinforce signs of an economic recovery. The Bank of Korea says its consumer sentiment index came in at 102 this month, up a single point from the previous month. The figure is lower than the level recorded last May, when consumer confidence was hit hard by the Seoul ferry disaster. Still, a reading above 100 does mean optimists outnumber pessimists. The monthly index reflects the overall economic outlook of Korean consumers, their living conditions and future spending plans. Now, Korean battery and chemical materials maker Samsung SDI plans to pump more money into its business this year. In its fourth quarter performance announcement on Monday, Samsung SDI said that it invested some $440 million last year, and it's going to significantly bolster investment this year, particularly on polymer batteries. Now, polymer batteries are mainly used in vehicles, laptops, and smartphones. The leading battery maker raked in some $1.75 billion during the fourth quarter, with operating profit around $37 million, but actually a net loss of about $120 million. And that's because while on-quarter revenue and operating profit slightly increased, the net loss was actually mainly due to last year's merger with an affiliate. Now, South Korea's passion for education is known the world over, and it's been widely acclaimed for its role in Korea's rapid rise from the ashes of the Korean War. But as expectations rise and dysfunctions are brought to light, there are new challenges for improving the system. For the latest on what's in the works, our Ji Myung-gil sat down with Sol Hoon, who is chairman of the National Assembly's Education Committee.
U.S. President Barack Obama has praised Korea's fervor for education. However, many say Korea's education system is in need of reform. What do you see as the main problems with the system?
교육열은 높지만 교육 시스템도 잘 구비되어 있느냐? 그건 또 아니라고 생각합니다. 한국 교육의 시스템은 여러 가지 문제가 많이 있습니다. 특히 대학이 학벌 중심으로 되어 있는 우리 사회이기 때문에 대학이 서열화되어 있습니다. 서울대학을 정점을 해가지고 인류대학으로 쫙 되어 있고 인류대학에 들어가기 위해서 온갖 노력들을 다 합니다. 그래서 이제 사교육 문제가 엄청난 사회적 문제로 나와 있죠. 이 문제를 어떻게 극복할 것이냐? 이게 우리가 풀어야 할 교육 문제, 그것도 우리 나라의 문제 이렇게 되어 있습니다.
You've emphasized improving the public education system, as private tutoring has become a major problem in Korea, with parents spending more than $17 billion on private education every year. So what needs to be done?
지금 우리가 사교육이 어느 정도 규모가 되는지 측정이 잘 안 되는 면도 있어요. 대충 공교육에 저는 그렇게 생각합니다. 공교육의 미니멈 3분의 1은 될 것이다. 공교육 예산에. 뭐 30조냐 40조냐 이런 다툼도 있어요. 그래서 그렇게 엄청난 규모의 사교육에 들어가는 비용이 줄어들고 그 사교육 비용의 일정 부분이 공교육에 투여되기만 한다면은 우리 학교 교육은 정말 정상적으로 돌아올 것이며, 그리고 대통령이 교육으로서 우리 국정 운영을 제대로 하겠다는 계획을 세우면은 국민들이 따라갈 거라 봅니다.
Let's talk about the education standards at Korea's universities and higher education. Do you think these institutions are providing quality education, and why or why not?
우리나라의 이 대학들이 갖고 있는 이 조건들을 살펴보면은 서울대학만 하더라도 좋아요. 이를테면 대학 각 대학마다 대학 평가하는 내용들이 있는데 그 내용들을 보면 뭐 대체로 50위 안에 들어가는, 서울대학을 대학원 중심 대학으로 바꿔 놓으면은 학벌 위주의 이 우리 사회에 있는 정점이 무너지면서 이게 좀 다른 형태의 그 대학 서열화가 정리될 것 아닌가. 그리고 전국에 있는 국립대학들이 다 같이 한 틀로 묶여내는, 이를테면 파리에 있는 대학들처럼 이렇게 정리를 해내면은 적어도 대학 서열화 그리고 학벌 위주 사회가 깨지는 단초는 될 것 아닌가.
What are your short and long-term goals as the chairman of the Parliamentary Committee for Education, Culture, Sports and Tourism?
단기적인 내년도 문제부터 해서 이 수능 문제를 정비해서 대학이 제대로 된 이 학생들을 뽑을 수 있게끔 시스템을 만들어주는 것이고, 장기적으로는 아까 말씀드린 대로 교육을 통해서 이 대한민국을 세계 속의 대한민국을 이끌어내는 이 시스템을 찾아내는, 국민 동의하에 찾아내는 이 작업을 해야 할 거 아닌가 하는 생각을 해요.
Greece, now with a new anti-austerity leader at the helm, faces the multi-billion euro question of how it's going to move forward now, saddled with such crippling debts as it is. Let's get the details from Eunice Kim, who is at the news centre for us. So Eunice, the new Prime Minister, Alexis Tsipras, has made some pretty big promises, including renegotiating his country's bailout, but it seems Europe doesn't really have appetite for it.
No, absolutely not, Mark. No signs of debt forgiveness, as had been called for by Alexis Tsipras, who is now, of course, Greece's prime minister after being sworn into the post less than 24 hours after his party's big win at Sunday's general elections. The new anti-austerity posture shown by Greece pits it directly against Germany's Chancellor Angela Merkel. In fact, a spokesman from the German government had come out to underline the importance for Greece to fulfill its commitment to its European creditors, a sentiment that was backed up by the group of Eurozone finance ministers as well. New Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras had called for a forgiveness of about a third of Greece's more than $300 billion debt. And because this divide between the new Greece and the rest of Europe is so wide, there are concerns that there could be a so-called Grexit, a Greek exit from the Eurozone in the coming months. French President François Hollande hours ago came out to say Greece must stay in the Eurozone on the principles of solidarity and responsibility and respect its financial obligations. We also heard from the head of the European Commission, Jean-Claude Juncker, who congratulated Mr. Tsipras on his win and also said the Commission stood ready to work with the new Greek government to ensure fiscal responsibility.
Well, we'll definitely be closely following this story, as it's likely just the start of the beginning, really. Let's turn our attention now to the US, where millions of people in the northeast of the country are bracing for a seriously major storm, and authorities say it's so serious and this blizzard could in fact be of historic proportions.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The brunt of that storm to hit in the coming hours, and authorities say that this could affect roughly 20% of the U.S. population, Mark, and authorities in multiple states issuing very stern warnings ahead of this crippling and potentially historic storm.
11 o'clock, a travel restriction for all roads, state roads, local roads, city roads, town roads, except for emergency personnel.
I'm asking every Rhode Islander to please get off of the roads by 8 o'clock tonight. Now, we're doing this because we believe this storm is so severe that it poses an imminent threat to the safety of our citizens.
As you see there, the states of New York, New Jersey, Rhode Island, Connecticut, and Massachusetts all declaring a state of emergency as authorities urged residents to head home early and pose travel bans in parts. Now, the storm is forecast to affect from Philadelphia all the way up to the Canadian border of the U.S. Public transit is to be shut down in New York City in a few hours starting at 11 p.m. local time. School was canceled for Thursday, and thousands
thousands of planes grounded in the major airports of that region as the weather system is expected to bring hurricane-speed winds and up to 90 centimeters of snow. Residents stocked up on things from groceries like bread and bottled water to shovels and snow blowers as the storm, Mark, could leave neighborhoods stranded for days, also with the possibility of power outages.
Well, let's hope everyone is safe and warm during what promises to be, like you said, a historically strong storm. Well, thank you very much, Eunice.
You bet.
And we'll see you back at noon.
See you then.
And a good Tuesday morning to you all as we kick things off with our 2015 Asian Cup coverage. Now, of course, last night's big match was Korea versus Iraq in the semifinals, with both teams one win away from the final. Now, they faced each other twice in the knockout stages before, and twice Iraq has won by penalty shootout, most recently back in 2007. Will it happen again? Well, no way, says Cinderella man Lee Jung-hyuk, who won a brilliant set-piece play started by Kim Jin-soo. Heads one past the goalkeeper, scoring yet again in this tournament, giving Korea the 1-0 lead in the 19th minute of the match. But an insurance goal in the 49th minute of the match when Kim Young-gwon sneaks this one past the reach of the goalkeeper, giving Korea the 2-0 lead in the 49th minute, as Korea's Kim Jae-hyun gets another clean sheet for a 2-0 win. With the win, Korea advances to the final as they're set to face off against the winner of Australia and the UAE. Now, when Olympic swimmer Soon Young tested positive for doping, it really shocked the swimming world, even here in Korea. But last night, reports have come out that the Marine boy Park Tae-hwan tested positive as well. Now, the initial report was Park Tae-hwan testing positive on a banned substance, but his management team, Team GMP, came out in a press release stating the reason for the positive test. Now, according to the team, he received shots for his knees through a hospital, which was treating him for free. And while the doctors stated that it was safe, it wasn't the case, as they cited the incident as the reason for the positive test. Now, they added that Park is very careful and that he doesn't even take cold medicines just to be safe. Super Bowl 34, St. Louis Rams versus the Tennessee Titans. The final play was Titans wide receiver Kevin Dyson getting tackled at the 1-yard line. The Rams winning the Super Bowl with a final score of 23-16. Really one of the closest moments in sports. Well, PGA's Park Sung-joon also came that close of winning his first PGA title, only he was quite happy with this result. With the 2015 PGA Humana Challenge taking place over the weekend, 29-year-old Park Sung-joon shoots a 7 under par in the final round, finishing off with a 21 under par overall, just short of the winner Bill Haas, who would win the tournament at 22 under par. But despite the runner-up finish, it was his best finish ever, with his previous best being tied for 32nd just last year. Now, Victor An, a.k.a. An Hyun-soo, might represent Russia now, but Koreans still cheer for him whenever he competes. Unfortunately, he came just short of winning his second straight European Championship gold. That's by winning the 500-meter event. The Russian gold medalist finishes fourth in the 1,000-meter and the 1,500-meter event and finishes with 71 points in total, falling short behind Netherlands' Sinke Knyet for a silver medal finish. Now, not a bad finish despite falling short and winning his second straight European gold. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day and see you guys again for your sports needs.
It's freezing this morning. I mean, we can see how temperatures dropped rapidly in just one day. Daytime high in Seoul will only peak at 0, and right now it feels like -10. And speaking of cold, it will be even colder tomorrow with lows kicking off at -8. But at least we won't receive a snowfall today. People in Gangwon-do and Gyeongsang-do provinces will have to deal with heavy snowfall. They will receive a snow of up to 30 centimeters, which could linger into tomorrow. So if you are in those regions, be extra careful. In the meantime, the rest of the country should have mostly sunny skies throughout the day. With that in mind, let's take a closer look at the readings for today. So the daytime high in Seoul will peak at 0, while Daegu and Gwangju top out at 6 and 4. But Busan should be relatively mild, peaking at 10. Now, as for the other regions, Jeju Island will rise to 7 and Daejeon will top out at 4, and it will be a snowy day for Dokdo with a high getting up to 3. That's all for the weather now. Stay warm.
Thank you very much, Jion, for the advice there. It is very cold, so do wrap up if you're heading out today. And that's all we have for now. Plenty more stories online, and we'll all be back at noon Korea time with our next newscast. Until then, goodbye.